So, we're going to run through the teaching plan you have in front of us. I need some volunteers. So basically what we're going to do is normally I'd have you guys in a conference room or someplace where we could display the iPad up on the screen. We'd be sitting down and we'd be starting with pre-brief. So
everybody in the audience, turn in your teaching plan to the pre-brief section.
Now, if you'll notice on my teaching plan, I've already gone through, I've already looked at it, I've read it, I've scanned everything, I've run through the scenario on the iPad by myself. You'll notice I've got a couple little tabby things here. That's my cue on things, how I know that things are going to progress from state to state. As we go through, I'll show you what I've highlighted. I kind of highlight the QR code scans when I know they're going to be important and what I need to look for. And so that's where I'll go from here. So I'm not going to really go through an entire pre-brief with them, but at this point, this is what I'm going to tell you guys. Where's our iPad for him? Charles, can I have an iPad?
Yep.
Details. I'm going to be showing them the iPad. So especially if this is their first time with the Rise, and even though, and we probably have to, refresh them with it. So for the scenario, it's going to run like other scenarios, but we are going to use an iPad and some QR codes. So I want you to treat the patient like you normally would, but if you see a QR code and you think it's appropriate to scan it at that point, that's when you would scan it. I usually tell my students, I don't want you to go through and just scan every QR code because it's there. You should scan them when they're applicable to the scenario that you're looking for. So some might be there, and they may not be useful for you at that time. A couple other things I'll mention is there is a patient ID scan code. This is going to assimilate like most hospital practices would. In order to give a medication, you're going to need to scan the QR code on the patient ID. If you don't do that, it will not allow you to give a medication. I will do that for this type of student, it's a level 2. In my later scenarios, I will not tell them that, because at that point, I think they should know to scan a patient ID first. So beginning scenarios, I kind of like to guide them through some of those practices to kind of remind them of it. Later on, they should get that. And I will tell you, when they scan the med without scanning patient ID first, the iPad will not allow them to do it. It'll give them an error code and say you have no patient information, just like they would in a normal clinical environment. I would walk through, when you go in the room, you'll notice that there's going to be some chest sounds on this patient. So he'll have appropriate anatomical lung sounds. So for this scenario, I'm going to have some earbuds in the room. It's best to listen to the scenario over earbuds. So I'll have some alcohol wipes so you can pass it back and forth so you can all hear them as it is. So playing it overhead doesn't always give you the idiosyncrasies of it. You guys will hear it because we will play it overhead, and you guys can notice the difference when you actually listen to it on the iPad as well, so you can pass it back and forth and listen to the lung sounds that way. I would ask you some questions. We would kind of get ready, and I'd say, okay, we're going to scan the scenario to begin. And this is where we're going to meet your patient.
So this is what they're seeing on their iPad. This is where it's important to be able to hear the heartbeat before
Okay, so we're going to have you guys scan it again as well.
There we go.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So this is your patient. So this is the patient you're going to be taking care of. His name is Patrick Armstrong. You should know that he is a 16-year-old male patient. He was actually 16. He's a football player. Just so you know, he's a big 16-year-old. Then he is 16, I swear. Yes, he is a large 16-year-old, which is a good conversation as well. So we'll go through the learning objectives. I would run through the learning objectives, every single one, all the way through. For time's sake, I'm not going to run through all of them, but we would discuss each of the learning objectives so you understand what it is they're going to be doing in this scenario. My learning objectives are more specific for early levels, less specific for later levels, because I don't want to give away what's going to happen. I wouldn't want to just lay out, well, this is what you're going to do today. I kind of like to kind of have a little bit of, not be telling them exactly what's going to happen all the time. Once we get to the learning objectives, we're going to watch this first. So we're going to watch report. So at this point, if you'd like, you could take notes on report. This is where they'd be taking notes on report, etc. And they'd be walking through and kind of going through report. It shouldn't be fighting. It'll just, the both of them will roll. I can hear it, it's just real quiet.
We'll try cranking this up if I blow your eardrum.
No.
We gotta help her. All right.
Turn the blood up.
2 minutes from now we're on. So while they work on that, in the meantime, I'm gonna just try to play a report with this as loud as it'll go.
Patrick is a 16-year-old male patient from 15 in the ER. He came in today with moderate exacerbation of asthma. He hasn't had much problem with his asthma for the last few years. He visited a friend's house and then realized he was trying to get through a cat. He started wheezing and took himself to the hospital several times.
This is a no.
By the way, he showed me the inhaler he's been using, and it's expired.
Okay, we'll replay
When he
this.
presented, respiratory rate was in the 20s.
Okay, here's your report.
Patrick is a 16-year-old male patient from 15 in the ER. He came in today with moderate exacerbation of his asthma. He hasn't had much problems with his asthma in the last few years, but he was visiting at a friend's house and didn't realize it was trying to get through a cat. He started wheezing and took his albuterol inhaler several times, but when it didn't help, his dad told him to get to the ER. His dad is at work, so he brought himself in. By the way, he showed me the inhaler he's been using, and it's expired. When he presented in the ER, his respiratory rate was in the 20s, bilateral breath sounds were diminished, and he had scattered inspiratory and expiratory wheezes throughout, with some minor abdominal and sensory muscle use. His stats were 95% on 2-liter nasal cannula. His peak flow was 265, and his FEV1 was 62%. He also had strong spasmodic hacking cough that was non-productive. I gave him the Duronet treatment, followed by an albuterol net 30 minutes later. Peak flows and FEV1 after that were 360 and 74% predicted. His breath sounds are much more aerated and less wheezy. His respiratory rate is about 20, and he's now sagging at about 95% of room air. No labs or x-rays have been done yet. The ER called about 10 minutes ago, and they want to send him home. He's supposed to get an albuterol with a spacer, Advair, and a peak flow meter. He will need instructions for everything, and some teaching regarding his new asthma action plan. They said that his dad is coming to pick him up in an hour or so.
So that was one of our more detailed reports. They're not always this way. Some of them are a lot less detailed and you kind of have to read between the lines. At this point, we can replay the report because they might have to go back through and get the report again. The videos are always replayable. The other thing you do at this time is I would probably ask them questions. So what did you think about this report? What are your priorities for this patient? What would you like to talk about the patient when you get there? So we'd walk through maybe different things that we want to address in that report based off that patient. So given that, what are the things that you guys would like to address with this patient?
It's like you got it also.
Playing the role of the student, you're probably going to go and you're going to address the orders that they said. If he wants to get home within the hour, dad's going to be come picking him up. You probably got a lot of education. Anything about the expired inhaler you might want to address with them? So we kind of walk through some of those things, maybe cue them off on some of that, and things that might be good teaching points for our 16-year-old patient. Might want to address the cat and his friends and different triggers as well, because he knows they're triggers, but it might be something that to kind of address with them as well. So we kind of walk through the report and kind of really kind of come up with a plan for how to go forward with that. Do you want to try to see if it works on the other, or should we just go?
Our tech is coming as well.
Playing video games.
Oh.
And then I noticed I had a hard time breathing around lunch. So I took my inhaler, but then I had to like take it an hour later. Then this cat came into the room, and I was like, "When did you get a cat?" And my buddy was like, "Around a month ago. Where have you been?" And I was like, I'm really allergic, and it's messing with my breath and my asthma. And And my buddy said, sorry. So I was kicking his butt and mad, and I finished up and left. I called my dad from work, and he told me to get to the ER. That's why I'm here.
So at this point, Patrick was a very funny actor. I just have to tell you, it was really funny to work with. At this point, we talk about Patrick. We talk about his affect, different things about his personality, and the ways we might get across. We maybe clue them into the fact that he was playing video games and that was important to him. Things that maybe would help you with a pediatric patient, and things you might want to talk about him with. So we talk about that in pre-brief as well. So now at this point, they've gotten a good report. They've actually gotten to see the patient, so we've gotten to see what the patient should look like. So when we go in and actually see Jerry here, if it was supposed to be Patrick, they've got a really good visual in their minds as to who Patrick is, what he looks like, and how he really was behaving at that certain time when he came in. When you hit continue at this point, it does pop up to the patient profile screen. So this will act as their simulated chart. They'll actually see all the information about Patrick that we normally would. So you can see his name, date of birth. It goes all the way through all his demographic type information that you would normally see in a chart. It still highlights the patient-centered care because this picture is there as well, so you can continue to see Patrick as you're looking at it. If you go up to the top, there's that hamburger menu up at the top. Once you click on that, that's where the chart is located. So as we walk through this is the time at which we would allow all of our students, so you can all do this as well. But we would go through and allow the students some time at this point to look at the patient's chart. No different than when they're going in to see an actual patient. We got some time with this one. It's not an emergency. We can walk through and see what's been done. So as we walk through things, we'll know there's no history and physical available. He just came in through the ER. It's not been charted yet. That's not unusual. Plus, it's a lot easier for us. They're hard to write. Yeah.
Do you want to mention the following along with it? This is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys. So just so you know, as we're going through this, all the chart forms are in here, as you see up there. The reason for that, as you follow along, is so that not only can you follow along and you can kind of highlight things and make marks as the things you want to mention as you're going through this during the scenario, but just in case the Wi-Fi does go down, you do have actual copies of this. You could quickly print this and hand it to your patients. If for some reason the Wi-Fi isn't working right, you've scheduled this for the day, the whole internet is down, now what do? You should still be able to use this patient. You have everything you need to still walk forward with this patient. You're just not going to have the QR codes and the fancy stuff that we were going to have, but you still should be able to progress forward and use this as a normal scenario as well.
I just want to mention the H&P too. This scenario, like Teresa mentioned, is an ED scenario, so there is no H&P purposely, so they don't have much. But in other scenarios, like for nursing, we want to teach them about the H&P and what's in there, and what can we gather. So depending, that'll be all in the teaching plan. When is there an H&P to start out with? When does it come in later in the scenario?
And it's usually very appropriate as to the scenario and how it starts. They're just coming in, they don't have a lot in their chart. There's not anything there, that would be normal. If they've been there for several days, there's a lot more chart, there's a lot more to look at, there's a lot more to cull through. You'll notice on there then there's the provider orders. It says exactly what the orders were 5 hours ago. This is what happened 15 minutes ago. Discharge orders came through and those are what they are. So it allows them to sit there and look at their orders and kind of figure that part of it out. The MAR shows, we did try to mimic a decent MAR as you would see in a healthcare facility. So we do have MAR divided out between scheduled, PRN, and discontinued. And then we also, if there were IV meds, we'd separate those out as well. But it kind of lets you know what things are due, what has been given, and it kind of lets you kind of follow along in that way. If you'll notice on the MAR, the meds are underlined. And Kim, why don't you go ahead and click on the ad there? The underlined meds will take us out to the Daily Med website. That is housed by the government. It's been active since it's been active for like over 20 years. And they constantly update it with the meds that are available, and it's free to us. It allows you to go in. It's kind of like your own med resource. So you can go in and see, what is an indicated contraindication, what are the precautions, what are the adverse, reactions with it, etc. Every med is hyperlinked to the Daily Med website, so you can go out and use that and they can kind of get the information there. Dosages, everything's out there you could possibly need.
So it's up to you as a facilitator. We did not create prep sheets for these scenarios to give to students. We felt that was up to each instructor to decide what they wanted their students to look up ahead of time. For earlier scenarios, you might give them the different meds that are going to be used during the scenario so they can look them up and come prepared. In later scenarios where we're not telling them what's happening, they're gonna be getting meds that they may not know are coming, just like we do in practice, so then they know this is their resource to look it up.
And it's great in the room, let's say the patient all of a sudden has a bizarre question that we might have put in the teaching plan. This is a reference that they would quickly be able to use, just like they would on the bedside computer in the room. They'd be able to pull this up and be able to see different things as they're going along. We do have the daily record, like I said before, this will guide us through the different vitals, what happened when he came, what happened all the way through. This varies from patient to patient as to how much is up there, but this kind of gives you an idea of what happened during that time. This is our active vitals form. So as Kim said earlier, some vitals in early scenarios, so level 1 scenarios in particular, will be checked against some standards. This one does not. There is nothing programmed in here. Students can definitely enter vitals on this screen. So when they get the vitals, they can enter them here. It will save them so you can go back and look at them. If they enter vitals twice, it'll save the last one only. It won't save the first one, so you should know that. They can definitely enter them. It will not, it doesn't check them against anything. But if we decided in the first semester scenario that we really think that it's important that the instructors check their vitals at this time, there's some, it'll check it for accuracy within, and it'll tell you the range of the teaching plans. Plus or minus 5 here, plus or minus 3 here, and it will check everything for accuracy at this point.
So there's a QR code for those?
Nope.
So if you're using a lifeless simulator, how do they?
You may, if you're gonna do this in low fidelity, you would have to provide the vitals for them. So like, it would be no different than the classroom. If you didn't have an actual live, so this one will not have them, we'd actually have to provide the vitals as we go in a low fidelity type environment. But on our high fidelity mannequins, they would just enter the vitals as they would get them. If we go through, there's progress notes here, so it actually shows, the note that the therapist wrote. There's no labs, there's been no x-rays. That's according to up to date, they're not needed. Patient education tab, this is a great tab for them. Each of these is a link to the patient education that they would be able to provide for this patient. So they know that they've got to do an inhaler instruct. They know that there's both an MDI and a DPI, so those are in there. They know there's an asthma action plan instruct they need to do. There's something in here on triggers. There's something in here on peak flow rate. So they will have all the information they need in order to go in and to prepare for this patient as they go forward. I also have, I don't know where I put them now, I have papers everywhere, but you can print them out. And so that if you would rather do them on the iPad, you can, but you also have printed copies. So if you wanted to, I know when I do teaching, I like to write some notes for the patient and do a few things and have them take it away. If you wanted to print these out from the appendix and have them bring them in and use them with the patient, you could definitely do that. It's a great way to do this type of teaching. And then, like I said, these are open educational resources. You could use this in any of your classrooms at any point, in any way. They're all free and able to be used. The level 1, it just tells the student where they at. So if they're ever stuck in a state, in prebrief, I usually tell them how the levels work. In level 1, if you want to know if the iPad's advanced, look at your level tab. If it is advanced, the level will have changed and will say level 2, which is really state 2.
Remember I said earlier, that's the word that gets a little confused. So at this state, it's really state 1, level 1, state 1.
And then this is how they exit the simulation if we choose to have them do that. I tell my students, don't go in the exit tab until I tell you to. In a low fidelity environment or however you're doing this, you can let them know, like, okay, now we want to exit. I want you guys all go to your exit tab, exit at this time. That's another way for them to know whether or not they finished the scenario, because the wording will change at the very end. If all the scenario objectives have been met according to the iPad, it will tell them that. All your scenario objectives have been met. Would you like to leave the scenario at this time? And this one says, are you sure when exit, all data will be lost because they haven't completed the objectives. So once they've had time to go through, you guys come up with a little bit of a plan over there while you were talking? I'll give you guys a minute.
So with nursing students, I always say, okay, now what are your priorities? Based on what you heard in report, based on what you saw the patient talk about, what you know about the pathophysiology of asthma, what you see in the orders, what are your priorities? And then I always break down into roles too. So decide, I'll have maybe 4 students in the room at one time sometimes. So somebody gets vitals.
Verity, you're in charge.
Yeah.
So the person in charge has to write on the whiteboard. So everyone is aware as we get vitals, as we get lung sounds. So we'll pull that closer. Someone else should be listening to lung sounds, heart sounds. There might be medications to prepare.
So over here, just so you guys
Organize
organize
each other.
I've got gloves over here, there's hand sanitizer, I do have a pulse oximeter, there's a blood pressure cuff and a thermometer here. I have actual stethoscopes, but I'm also going to grab you guys one to plug into the iPad when that becomes necessary. I've got meds over here, here's your peak flow and your, spacer.
So audience, you're gonna be following along under, state one now, because they've entered the room. So this is state one, you got a little bit of an overview of what's gonna happen here in state one, what we've got planned. And then you can check them off as they go through the expected behaviors. So as a facilitator, this is your cue, okay, this is what should be done during this state. So let's see how they do. So as they scan, I'm gonna scan the codes they're scanning so you can see it. If you, like we mentioned, if you have an Apple TV, or Air server, this would automatically be displayed on the monitor in the room
Well,
too.
not automatically, you have to set
Get
it
it
up like that. It's not just-
So at this point, if I were you guys, here's for the iPad when it comes to that time. And then there is some wipes over there when you want to switch between years if you want to watch them. So every time you guys start out, knock on the door, walk in, introduce yourself.
Right on the board, you know, introduction, patient assessment. So, and then you need to assign who's doing what.
When you have students observe, it's up to you as a facilitator. Do you want them to queue? Because you know it's a lot easier to see what should be done when you're the one watching, right? And what surprised me at the AXA conference, I just said there is research that the observers learn more than the participants.
Oh, she's coming. They're taped here. Okay, so, why don't we like start the scenarios normally with, let's knock on the door, let's enter the room. I know Patrick's laying down now, but he normally probably would be in a chair ready to go, okay?
Hi Patrick. My name is Andrea, and I'm one of the nurses of this team here, and we're just gonna check you over. I understand that having a little problem breathing, so we're gonna ask you some questions and get you fixed up here and see where we go from there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna be the technician at this point and I'll be the patient. So I'll say, hi, Andrea.
You feel way better now, you're going home.
I'm feeling better, okay.
You're ready to go.
What are you gonna do now?
First, I'm just gonna scan your bracelet, make sure I have the right person I'm treating here, and then it also allows me to access your charts. So, can you tell me your name and date of birth, please? There we go. And so, let me see. There we go. Yeah, Patrick Armstrong, 1116.
Tell them your name and date.
I'm Patrick Armstrong,
11:16.
11/16/2001.
All right. Patrick, I'm one of the paramedics here, and I'd like to just put a little probe on your finger and check your oxygen saturation right now. Is that okay?
Is it gonna hurt?
No, not at all. It would just go just like this, doesn't hurt at all.
Okay. I'm so mad at my friend for getting that cat. He should have told me.
I understand how frustrating that must be.
Patrick, I'm John, I'm one of the paramedics here, I'm gonna be checking your blood pressure and pulse.
So when you read it, you get a saturation of 97%.
Oxygenation is 97%. Thank you, 97%.
On.
I'm just gonna touch your finger
on the left forefinger.
room air. On room air.
All right.
Patrick, I'm just gonna feel your wrist here, if that's okay, and just check your pulse, okay? Patrick,
Can you hand me my phone? The nurse took it away, but I needed pictures and Snapchat. I need my phone.
well, Patrick, I know that stuff is important to you. Right now, I really would like us to just focus on helping you feel a little bit better, then we'll get your phone back to you a little later. Are you having any pain right now, Patrick?
No pain.
His pulse is 102.
Feeling a lot better now.
And what's the respiratory rate?
Respiratory rate is 22. Blood pressure is 102/86.
I'm gonna touch your forehead here, okay? Just touch your skin. Temperature?
Temperature is normal.
Am I gonna be able to play football this weekend?
Well, let's just get you feeling a little bit better, and then we'll talk to the doctor about that, okay?
Okay. Coach is gonna be really mad at me.
So Patrick, your eyes are just kind of a little funny looking. Do they normally look like that?
They paid me off to say something.
They look like crying because of the cat. Your pupils are right over there.
Took another one of his eyes.
The cat makes my eyes itch.
Okay.
So what right now with the lung sounds, we do have the QR code, so we're gonna listen to lung sounds right now. We should probably go down and go below the gowns, this would be a good teaching point. We should go underneath the gown to listen to lung sounds. And he had goop on him, so some of these might have fallen a little bit, I did my best to stick them in the right spot. So you can go ahead and scan a QR code when you get to it.
And it's over the speakers, it's harder to hear, but.
Breath sounds are essentially clear. And then you can go to the next one and scan a different one. Scan a different one. Yeah, she's just wild, he's silly, it's weird.
It shows on the iPad.
Does everything sound okay?
That was kind of easy.
Yeah, I still feel wheezy.
So I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. His pupils are quite uneven, so I didn't quite know how to address them this one. What I would do is it's just a mannequin issue, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I would have stuck out and looked at the chart just to double check. I wouldn't have asked that ridiculous.
Patrick, have you been hit in the head lately?
Well, I did get hit pretty hard last Friday, but I took that guy out.
So I'd like you to kind of demonstrate Why don't we also listen posteriorly to breath sounds?
Posterior?
Yep, this is a posterior lead for breath sounds as well, because he does have.
Patrick, I'd like to, he's sitting, I'm gonna lean
He
you forward
usually
a
is
little
sitting,
here,
yeah.
just a little bit. We're gonna just listen to your lungs, okay?
Okay.
Doing great.
So I see this different for where we're targeting.
Yep.
I mean, they're doing an assessment, but if it was a respiratory course, they would have pulled the respiratory therapist in right away.
Yeah. So we're just trying to make this kind of work for our whole group right now. But normally this, I mean, you can kind of get the gist of it in this way as to how you might implement this and how you go forward. So this one's definitely wheezy. So at this point, you guys could maybe think of a few questions you'd like to ask him based off of the stuff you've heard in report.
So are you feeling better than when you first came into the emergency department?
Yes, I feel a lot better. Still a little wheezy, but better.
Now, have you been doing something different than you normally do? Do we know about the cat already?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
So you've gone to your friend's house and you never had a reaction at your friend's house before, but now with the cat you do?
Yes, that cat really made it worse.
Okay. And as far as your breathing historically, has your breathing been okay up to this point?
I've never been in the hospital before. I just use my albuterol when I feel a little wheezy.
Okay, when's the last time you took your albuterol inhaler?
Oh, I took it a couple times at my friend's house and then on the way to the emergency room.
And how long have you had that particular inhaler?
Oh, probably about a year.
Okay.
When was the last time you saw the doctor about getting an inhaler?
My mom does all, I don't know. She sets all that up. I gotta go to football. Am I gonna be able to get out of here pretty soon?
Well, I think we're going to probably assess you a little bit better. We want to make sure that you're not wheezing if possible when you leave, so we're going to give you some breathing treatments. We also want to look at your inhaler, and we also want to make sure you're taking your inhaler properly. So we're going to be looking at you're using a spacer and whether your technique, you understand how to optimally take your inhaler. So that'll probably take about an hour or so. So what we'd like you to do is maybe call your family and just say, you know, I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna get some education, and then you can come and pick me up. But what's important when we get done with this is that you call your doctor and you make an appointment so that they can follow up with you.
Okay, so I get my phone back then?
Sure.
Yes, what is a spacer?
We're gonna show you how to use your inhaler with a special device that will help you get the optimal amount of medication. So there is a technique involved, and if you don't take it properly, you don't really get the full effect. So we're gonna have the respiratory therapist come in and show you how to use that equipment. Do you want, at this point, would we order it?
It's already ordered.
It's
Remember the
already
beginning was
ordered.
already ordered, it's ready to scan.
Okay,
So, and if you're curious again, you can go back and if you'll notice on your iPad, you should also be at level 2. So the triggers, like on my sheet, my triggers to go forward was, they just had to listen to breath sounds. And that automatically advanced it into state 2. So it'll tell you that you're at level 2 right now.
So, obviously I'm not an instructor, but I know the ladies really like the highlighting technique, and then on your tables, there should be the little arrow tags. If you don't have them, I can find some around the tables, but just kind of marking, what are the triggers, what are the things I really need to pay attention when you're looking at a 50-page booklet? What are the things that I can use to progress?
So I use the tabs, I put them at all of my progress points. These are the things I need to happen. I use the highlighter in other ways throughout it, so this, I always highlight in one color, the things that actually need to progress, and then if you'll notice back here, I highlighted a few other things that I wanted to keep track of throughout the scenario. So I want to keep track of, I'm looking to see that they did this, and so I'll look for those things. But I really do, these tabs are very helpful, because you don't want to get stuck in the middle of the scenario, you want to make sure that they did do things progress.
So, just kind of catching up with what they're doing up here. Kim's,
she scanned the bracelet, and then you scanned the albuterol. Okay.
Because we did scan just the albuterol and got a big fat red
You got a big
X.
fat red X. So if you just scan the albuterol, the patient ID, just like in the hospital, it says no. If you have no patient information, you cannot deliver that
Which
medication.
is what happened.
Yep.
Okay. So then the respiratory therapist would proceed to do the education. I'm not sure, I would have that in front of me, right? But I'm,
Not the student.
okay, I'm thinking
Oh,
of a
unless you,
facilitator.
if you wanted the patient education stuff, yes. So the patient education, we would have the paper printed out, but it's also on the iPad, so you can pull it up.
Or, yeah, for the medicines.
Yeah, and you can go up and pull it up on there.
Okay, so the student will then do the instruct,
So why don't you go ahead and instruct your patient on that?
okay? Patrick, what we need you to do is sit up nice and high, so I position you real well.
We'll say he is.
He is, yeah. So this is your spacer, and your spacer is going to help you get your medication in, and it's not, it makes it easier to take it. So I'm gonna show you how to use this. This is your albuterol inhaler. What I have here is a placebo, so we're gonna practice with water first. So this is my placebo now. This is what we would actually do. So we were gonna practice, I'd sit them up and show them how to use the spacer, and the spacer just gets put in there like that. Then sits up, he actuates it, takes a deep breath in, holds it, and then lets it out.
Okay, so this is a really good thing that we've added to some of these videos. So as a facilitator, I listen to my student go through and instruct the patient. And I've kind of listened and followed the steps. Did she do a good job? Didn't she do a good job? Right now, in normal, whether it's low fidelity or high fidelity, this patient is not going to do an inhaler for you. No matter how hard you try, it's not going to happen. So we always have to say, okay, he did it, and that's the way you progress. So in this case, I've evaluated her teaching, and I'm going to have you scan this, and I would tell them this, scan this. Hit play. Now, I want you to evaluate how the patient did his inhaler. So, at this point, the student gets to decide, did I instruct the patient correctly? Did the patient do it correctly? Do I need to reevaluate what he did and re-instruct? So this is where they would go ahead and say, you know what, I don't think he did it right, I think I need to try again. And they would do it again. So if she would re-instruct him again and she did a good job, I could still give her, no, you didn't do it right again. Give her the same video, or I could have her do the other video, which is a slightly better job.
again, the audio is not working on their heads.
So we've incorporated that type of technique with videos in a couple of other spots. So the same thing could happen with his DPI when they try to instruct him on the Adler. So the same thing would happen. We have good videos and bad videos. We also have Allen's tests out there for those of you doing blood gases. We've done videos so that you can see whether the Allen's test is good or bad, because we all know in simulation, the mannequin does not do those things. So we try to think of ways that we can incorporate things that the mannequin normally doesn't do, so that you can actually see the patient doing it, and then evaluate it in that setting as well.
Oh, the scanner. Okay.
So one of these, you can actually hear the spacer whistle.
Yeah, you can hear it on the bad one. You can
So
hear the
that you
whistle,
know.
but it, the audio's not working real well right now, so you can't hear it, but. I'm gonna let you, this one will not progress until you actually do the DPI as well, because that's the last one. So I'll show you this video.
Are you doing A or B?
I did it. I forget that that's up there when I do it here. And if I look at everything, I have it highlighted here, so once the patients have accessed the patient education tab, and they've gotten through the DPI by scanning either A or B video, that means that this will allow them to exit and say the objectives have been met. As a facilitator, I'd be looking to watch, are they instructing the patient properly, have they gone through triggers? You'd be looking for all those things as they're walking through things. This is really more about the patient education aspect of things and trying to make the environment be more patient-centered and then engaging as well. Like, how do we get the environment to do this, and how do we make the patient react in those ways? You have met your objectives. They're still trying to figure out the volume. So yeah, let's get our grades. Thanks, Jerry, you did great as well. And this was a really, really simple scenario. We didn't want to make anything overly complex in any way, but depending on the level of complexity with each scenario, it depends on how you roll through with things and where things go. Some scenarios will have a lot of QR codes. Other scenarios will only have a couple, because it's really more about what's happening in the environment and adding to that environment as you're walking through with your curriculum and your objectives.
So we're going to go to heart failure next, but first I just want to kind of give you an overview for those of you in the audience, so for the different disciplines. So who are my MA instructors? Okay, so same storyline for MA, but in a clinic setting. And then he's coming in, they still have to get a history, they still have to get vital signs. Obviously, they're not going to listen to lung sounds, but they would be doing some education about peak flow and inhalers and things like that. So that's how it's modified for that level. For nursing instructors, so we have different levels. Level 1 and 2 are also in a clinic setting, where you're using the asthma action plan, you're doing some education, what type of inhaler you should be using, when to call the doctor, things like that. Level 3 is in a hospital setting, and then level 4 is very emergent care. EMTs, that scenario is a little bit different. We actually videotaped them out in a parking lot. So he was trying to drive to the emergency room, got too short of breath, had to pull over. And so the EMT students will go through level 1 is a scene survey, level 2 is a primary assessment, level 3 is a secondary assessment, level 4 is a reassessment. So the videos correlate to that. And those hot spots that we talked about earlier, instead of them actually listening, you can just tap on the screen and see the hot spots. So just a preview so that you know now as we go into the heart failure storyline, you'll kind of see similar design of the scenarios according to each discipline.
Where are the barcodes to the different videos that you were having on the cards?
Oh, they're all in the QR codes.
So they're in the teaching plan at the very beginning of all the QR codes. It's on page 7. Oh, right there. So page 7 has all of oh, there is a misprint. So, on the one where it says FEV 1B, it should say DPIB. That, we learned that. That's one of those little mistakes that we found when we were going through things again. But really, they're all listed right here. The one that says FEV 1B, it should say DPIB.
And that's been fixed out on the website, it was just that these were
We
printed.
printed these
differently.
before we fixed it.
Yep, so when you go to download from either with Secure Content Locker or the website, it's fixed.
And like I said, I took these and cut these apart and put them on index cards because that was a good way to kind of separate them out and decide what to do. You could actually take those and if you didn't want to be in the room with your student, let's say, please go scan the one that says MDIB, and you could have them just on the wall and let them watch the video that way. So you could, there's multiple ways you could do this going through.
Did you print them out on stickers?
You possibly could, I don't see why not. You can print them however you want.
A sticker.
We use sticky khaki, that like gray khaki, because then it's not permanent, you can move them around.
So you just print it on paper?
Yeah. Really good question from them.
As far as you had mentioned earlier, facilitator codes, if you want to jump around a little more, or go ahead, is there a facilitator code that's?
In this
general?
scenario, we did not use facilitator codes, but the way you jump ahead is just to go to that page where it says, scan a QR chess code, will get you to the next level, scan a QR chess code. So it's kind of like, some of the other ones we've implemented just facilitator codes to move you ahead. That was something we've learned along the way that makes it a lot easier. But, you know, you just have to scan whatever it says, you just skip right forward.
We do recommend you cut them out like this. If you try to scan them off the sheet, your iPad will scan whatever it sees first, which usually isn't what you want.
Yes.
So it helps to separate them out. You can try to use your hand to cover it and things like that, but it ends up scanning.